Hey, this is Mike from the One Stop Co-op Shop with a quick Kickstarter review of Frostpunk, the board game. And as always with my Kickstarter coverage, I receive no compensation for this review. I just want to help you make an informed decision. Frostpunk is a desperate game of survival in a post-apocalyptic icy wasteland. But is it fun? Let's find out. So the short answer is yes, but let's get into some of my favorite things about the game. Although I will note I've only played one scenario, so I haven't seen everything it has to offer. First of all, I love the tough moral choices that the game throws at you. And not just moral in kind of a narrative way, but also in a mechanical way, so you have kind of a risk-reward thing going on. First of all, you have these really cool laws you can pass, and many of them are either-or pairs. So for example, a big one you'll probably do pretty early on is, do you want to put your children in the settlement to work? Or do you want to build a shelter to protect them from the cold? And those choices will have far-reaching implications for the game, giving it a lot of variety based on where you go. They'll have different events that'll come up later on based on the choice you made. They'll make your citizens happy or unhappy, contributing to your victory or failure. And also it's just an interesting kind of choice to make, like how good of a person do you want to be when you're trying to survive in desperate situations? And you get similar choices in this big deck of morning cards that basically start each day, where again you'll have 2 or 3 choices, and often it'll cost something to do the right thing, but it could have far-reaching implications later, put new events in the deck, good or bad. It really leads to a cool feeling of world building and an emergent narrative, while also forcing you to decide what kind of civilization you want to rule. And on a related topic, I love the dusk cards that you draw after each of your action phases. These generally come from the choices you've made, both in the morning events and also from your laws, and they get shuffled in, and some of them are recurring things like bonuses because of a choice you made, or penalties you have to deal with over and over again. And they really give a feeling of cause and effect and permanence to the game. It's very much like the events in Robinson Crusoe, except I think even more thematic and interesting here. And a nice thing is you have great information about what's coming, what you need to have above or below, what consequences you'll suffer. You just don't know when it will come out. And I personally really enjoy that. It doesn't feel random or like you're getting unfairly treated by the cards, although they will destroy you sometimes. But it again contributes to this feeling of emergent narrative, of world building, of tough choices, and it really varies up the tactical landscape of what you do on your turn, trying to address what might come out of this deck. Speaking of the actions, I really like the core action placement mechanic of the game. You'll generally have 7, 8, 9, 10 worker meeples, and you can put them on spaces to pick up resources. You can build buildings and then have them go into the buildings to work them. You can discover more land by clearing the snow from your settlement. So lots of choices, but on top of that, making the puzzle more challenging and more desperate, you have the heat mechanic, because the further out you go from your settlement and the less you fire up your generator with coal, the more your workers will get sick as you have them go into different types of buildings. And some buildings are better insulated than others, which will contribute to them keeping your workers healthier. So it really adds up to this tough puzzle of where to place your workers, while also giving you a lot of variety in your choices to again deal with what's going on with your civilization, what's coming out of the dusk cards, just a lot of fun in the core action mechanic of the game. And the thing pushing that action puzzle to the next level is how tense and desperate this game can feel. Because like a lot of great worker placement games or survival games, you never can do everything you want to do. You might have your food under control, but whoops, you didn't build enough shelter to keep everybody warm. Then you get your shelters in order, but now your people are discontented and rioting because you've been forcing terrible laws on them. And the whole time you're making these tough choices, you have a storm barreling down on you that will make your entire situation all the more difficult to survive. Now, I won't claim that this desperation is always fun. Sometimes it can really bum you out. I certainly had some kind of depressing moments, but it all contributes to a challenging and often exhilarating experience that I really enjoyed. And a final thing I really appreciated, even in just the one scenario I played, is how much variety is built in. There's tons of morning cards, so you'll almost never see them, tons of dusk cards, and even when you pick the same law, you might get a different card hidden in your deck. There are lots of laws, and you get random ones each time you play, random technologies, random resources on your starting places, random tiles you reveal, so lots of things change from game to game, even all of your starting resources. And also, though I haven't played them yet, the designer tells me there are more numerous scenarios, and they're even going to have alternative setups for the same scenarios, so you can really find the way you like to play, vary up the experience, and keep it fresh, I expect, for a long time. But there are definitely things about the design that aren't going to appeal to all gamers. Let's get into a few of them. A quick first one to get out of the way is that the theme is really a bummer. You are going to have people dying, you might put your children to work, you might have to deal with prostitution and alcoholism in your settlement, so just kind of be aware of that if those things might bother you or the people you game with. Second, the game is incredibly challenging. The best I've done in all my plays is getting to day 8 out of 12, so I haven't even come close to winning yet. Now, the designer told me that what I'm playing is basically hard mode, and they'll have lower difficulties so you can kind of modify your experience, so I don't think this should be too much of a problem, but just be aware that if things start going bad with your civilization, it can get really bad quickly. Things can snowball, out of control, and you might lose in a horrific way, so just kind of be prepared for that experience. A third potential concern is the cooperative play, which is not going to appeal to all gamer groups. Basically, you take all the actions and the meeples you would place, and you just take turns putting them down. You don't own some of the workers just for your use, you don't have buildings that are only yours, you don't have like an avatar that you're controlling, so if you don't mind discussing with a group and then figuring out what actions to take together, it shouldn't bother you at all. But if your group struggles in discussions or sometimes has an alpha player problem, Frostpunk doesn't do that much to mitigate that or take that away. And my final concern, which is pretty common with a lot of survival and empire building games, is that there might be the feeling as you play more that there are certain kind of intro strategies you'll often use, like I'll always build this building on the first turn and this on the second. I do think the variability in the opening setup and what resources you have and what tiles are on the board don't make it completely cookie cutter, but there aren't that many different buildings, so from game to game you are going to see yourself building a lot of the same kind of things. It's not like there's a drastic variety here in that. It wasn't a problem for me. The game absolutely never felt stale, but I could see it being a problem for other players. So overall, I think Frostpunk is a real winner. I thoroughly enjoyed my plays, as desperate and horrible as they were, as terribly as my civilizations fell apart, and this is a game that really stayed on my mind each night that I played it. I would think about new strategies, new buildings I could try, new laws I could enact. It's the kind of game where, as high as the challenge level is, it motivates me to keep striving and trying new things until I can finally, maybe one day, win. I'll end by comparing Frostpunk to two other games that it kind of reminded me of, This War of Mine and Robinson Crusoe. And for me, so far, Frostpunk rises above both of those. I think it has close to the same level of emergent storytelling as This War of Mine. I think it has a lot of the cool kind of feeling of building up your civilization and getting these combos of items to help you survive better as Robinson Crusoe. But the big thing for me is that it feels much less random than either of them. You don't have the action dice in Robinson Crusoe where you waste almost your entire turn because you rolled the wrong symbol. You don't have This War of Mine where you go in the wrong building and it falls on your head and half your people are dead. Now, things can happen terribly, but you have a lot of predictability, more than in either of the other games. The choices you make will come back to bite you, but they are your choices. So yeah, so far, even having only played one scenario just on Tabletop Simulator, I am all in on this one. I am just loving it. And speaking of TTS, if you want to see my playthrough of a full game and watch how I die, just click the link that just popped up. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.